Welcome to She Vets It, the leading podcast celebrating the extraordinary journeys of women in the military, from active duty to veterans. Today, we're honored to host a groundbreaking figure in naval history, Commander Billie June Farrell, the first woman to command the legendary USS Constitution. As we delve into Commander Farrell's remarkable story, we reflect on the profound impact of her leadership for women in uniform, both past, present, breaking barriers, and inspiring generations to come. Welcome, Commander Farrell, to She Vets It.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. We could just dive right in. I shared about all the wonderful things that you're doing, and it's such an honor to have you here. I just want to know, have you always wanted to join the military?
I did figure this out at a young age. So I was actually 10 when I was channel surfing one day and found the Naval Academy graduation on TV. I stopped and watched the whole ceremony. And as soon as it was done, went to find my parents to tell them I knew where I wanted to go to school. So it definitely was a long journey to get there, but has been a part of my life for a long time now.
I was reading, there was a photo that was out there that you were next to the USS Constitution, and your dad took this photo. And who would have known that today that you would be the first female naval commander of the USS Constitution? What did that mean to you?
Yeah, that picture was taken in 1998. So I was a teenager in high school, and we had just finished the state swim meet. I was a competitive swimmer growing up. And then my family took a road trip to Annapolis, Maryland, so I could see the campus at the Naval Academy. And then, as luck would have it, we continued up the coast here to Boston, walked the Freedom Trail. My dad happened to take that photo. So the other thing you can notice if you look at it is I'm actually wearing a Naval Academy hat since we had just come from the campus. But the other thing I always think is really special, again, photo was taken in 1998. That was the same year a woman took command of a combatant ship in the Navy for the first time. So to be able to look at that picture from 16-year-old me to being able to be the first woman to command USS Constitution here is very humbling and special. And the first thing I did when I found out I was selected for the job was to go find that photo.
Wow, that was very prophetic. You did know that was destined to be your future. I know you're dual military, and because dual military can be challenging at times, what helped you be able to navigate mother, be a commander, and a wife?
So my husband and I actually met when we were midshipmen at the Naval Academy. So our first date was actually the weekend before 9/11, which I usually just say as a point of reference for kind of our career has been the military together for this entire time. He did retire last year, and so he has joined the civilian sector. But I think the biggest thing, there are times that we were able to be together and times we weren't. But I think open communication was definitely always important in our relationship, as well as expectation management, because sometimes there are jobs that you take that are going to be harder than others, and that's okay as long as you're honest with each other about it and talk about it. There are other times that one of us, for example, had a dream job open up that we really wanted to do, and the other person supported the other and made that work and figured out how to stay together as a family. And then, as far as being a mom, every Sunday we have to sit down and bounce calendars off each other and figure out who's got drop off and pick up and what engagements I have and what work things he has going on. And sometimes we get it all done and we high five each other and we feel good about it. And other days we don't. And that's okay. And I think, again, just understanding that sometimes you're going to fail and that's okay. And then you learn from it and you try harder the next day. And so I've got an 8-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. And so for them, a lot of the times the things that we get stressed out about don't even bother them. So I think just keeping that perspective and not always being so hard on yourself is very important.
Something really important, and I don't hear people talk about it enough, and that's expectation management, and which means you need to communicate because you can't manage something you don't know.
And you hit it on the head too. Communication, effective communication goes two ways. And being a good listener is just as good as being a good speaker and being able to connect those two things. And so my husband and I, we learned early on we communicate differently. And so there were times I needed to just talk or to vent, and I didn't need him to solve a problem or anything else, or just that we explain things in different ways. And once we figured that out, our communication skills grew and were much easier for us to actually have honest discussions.
As a crew member, For the USS Constitution, what are some unique challenges and rewards being associated with such a vessel?
So first and foremost, this is a special duty assignment in the United States Navy. So every crew member has to apply, interview, and actually be accepted to serve here. So it's a huge honor to get to serve as a crew member of USS Constitution. But probably the biggest difference in our day-to-day jobs as opposed to other commands we've all served at is the amount of public affairs and public engagements that we're able to do to represent the United States Navy. So right now, we've already entered our summer hours for tours. So we're open Tuesday to Sunday, 10 through 6. And we're getting 2,000 to 3,000 people a day that come visit the ship. And so we average between 500 and 600,000 visitors a year. But the other thing that's unique about the command is about 60% of the crew is actually from boot camp for their first assignment in the Navy. And so we have them trained to be out there to engage with the public, to share the history of the ship, but also to share the story of the history or the story of the Navy today, which is part of the reason that we're here. That is a huge part of it. We also support Navy Weeks across the country. So every year, the Navy Office of Community Outreach does about 20 to 25 Navy Weeks across the country, usually in areas that don't have a lot of Navy presence, so that we can engage with the public on what we do as a Navy. And so I always have a crew that represents and goes to those as well. So I've got a crew in Montgomery right now. And then I actually have a crew headed to Fort Worth next week for Navy Week down there. So we do that. And then we also cover the flags and funeral honors for the greater Boston area for our fallen veterans. And so we do 1 to 2 funerals a day where we send crew out to pay our respects and to be there to support the families. And then for awards, some of my favorite things that we get to do whenever we have a crew member leave is they all get a piece of the ship to take with them. So whenever we have maintenance and the wood comes off the ship to get repaired, we repurpose that so everybody gets a piece of that. They get a crew card. So it's a metal piece that says the years that they served on board. And you can still talk to people that served on the ship in even the 60s and 70s. And they're always so proud to share their crew card and that they were part of this amazing legacy. And then the other thing we get here is the ceremonial duty ribbon based on the assignment and what it represents for the Navy. So it's a very unique assignment given what we do here in the different mission sets, but it's an honor and a privilege every day I get to set foot on the ship.
I think that's an impressive assignment for someone just getting out of boot camp because it's very educational and the ship goes back 224 years.
1797 is when she was actually launched. So we were able to celebrate the ship's 225th birthday last year. And then the 226 was in October of 23.
For someone who's not in the military or someone who have never been in the Navy, what does that mean being the commander of the USS Constitution?
Quick history lesson. So following here in Boston, a lot of things take place around the Revolutionary War and kind of the start of that. But we actually, following the Revolutionary War, we disestablished the United States Navy. We didn't know how to pay for ships. They took a lot of maintenance. And so we actually sold off all the ships and we basically moved on and said, we're not worried about establishing a Navy. And that was fine until 1794. We were sending merchants across the ocean for trade, much like we do today. And they started to get taken captive by the Barbary corsairs who were holding our ship's crew and cargo for ransom. And on top of that, the British, who had more ships than anybody else at this point, a very well-known maritime power, were impressing sailors into service. So they would stop any ship they could, take the sailors off, and let them know that they now worked for His Majesty the King. So as a new country, we decided this is not how it was going to go. And so 1794, George Washington and Congress passed the Naval Armament Act to reestablish the United States Navy by building 6 frigates. Constitution was the third of those frigates built here in Boston. She went on to fight in the Quasi-War with France, the Barbary Wars, and most notably the War of 1812. She is undefeated in battle with a record of 33-0, and she's named America's Ship of State to this day. So to be part of a long legacy of maritime power that has been the United States Navy for that long is extra special. But the other thing I've had a lot of chance to reflect on here, Constitution was built for freedom of the seas, open shipping lanes, anti-piracy. All missions the United States Navy still does today. The technology's changed, but the missions necessarily haven't. And so a huge part of connecting the dots for the public is why I love this job so much as well.
I read the ship still sails, but not as frequent as maybe other Navy ships that are out there.
Correct. So 6 to 7 times a year, we're actually able to leave the pier here and go out into the harbor. So I've been able to do 12 of those during my time here so far. And so we do take a tug with us just for safety purposes. The sailors still climb, they still do all the sail work that's required, but we don't actually set sail on the ship. But a huge part of that is the crew size in 1812 was 450 to 500. And today the crew size is 80. And so when you're talking sails that are the size of a basketball court and weigh over a ton, manpower makes a difference. So we still do everything. We actually do that to honor certain groups. We usually look at partnering with local veteran organizations. And last year we were able to do a women veterans cruise since it was the commemorative year since the overturning of the Combat Exclusion Act or Women's Integration Service Act. And so we had about 150 women veterans on board through all the generations, which was extra special to be able to do that and to celebrate their service as well.
I appreciate what you're doing because I feel like when a woman wins and she's able to break glass ceilings, that's a win for everyone. It's a win because I know that it's not always easy working in a male dominant environment. What has been some challenges and tips that have helped you navigate in this career and still allow you to be authentic to who you are?
Yeah, so I think to start with kind of the first part of what you said is the thing in this role that I also is extra special to me is I don't just represent myself. I represent the over 70,000 women we have serving on active duty in the United States Navy and the over 30 women in command of ships around the world. I'm just the one that's privileged to be able to do these kinds of things and get the message out there while they're around the world doing the mission, the other missions the Navy needs them to do. That part is always extra special to me as well. As far as being my authentic self, I actually think that's a great way to start. I think when I commissioned as a junior officer, I struggled with that a little bit. I think I thought there was a certain way I needed to act or behave or the cookie cutter of what the Navy wanted me to be. And it took some time. It took some time for me to figure out that actually to be a good leader and to be effective, I needed to be the authentic version of myself that was me. And once I got there, I think that was a much easier place for me to learn how to be a good leader and to take feedback and to bring what I had to the table. Because one of my favorite things about the military is we come from all different walks of life. And so we all bring different perspectives and different things to the table that maybe we never even considered before. And so challenging yourself to be able to, again, actively listen and take all those things and put it into who you are, I think is extra important. But I would say I only had men for captains when I was coming up through the ranks, but I had great admiration and respect for them. They set a culture of dignity and respect, and that was the norm, not the exception. And so that's how I grew up in the Navy. So I feel very blessed. That is how it is. And I talk about it a lot with my crew, even that one of the things I cover with them when they check in with me is that we will all be treated with dignity and respect. We all raised our right hand to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, which means we have each other's backs. And so I feel very blessed that I grew up with those mentors, several of them that I'm still in touch with. And I think the other thing is, again, I have multiple mentors, and I tell kids this a lot when we talk about not just diversity at the junior level and who we're bringing in, but to diversify your mentors, find people that don't look like you, to get those different backgrounds and those different perspectives. And sometimes if I need something, I'll call one mentor with a question because I know that they had a similar situation and I liked how they handled it. And sometimes I call multiple mentors to get different data points to figure out what the kind of course of action is for me to take. And I think just people that are in your corner and want you to do well and push you to see the best version of yourself that sometimes you probably don't even see.
You shared find diverse mentors from various backgrounds. I heard the new term reverse mentorship. You can learn from someone younger because they're from a different generation. Sometimes we think because we're older, we have more experience. Sometimes they are more familiar with technology. So not only look up, but also look behind you, those that are coming along that may have different experience because how you lead to Gen X or millennial is different than how you would mentor a baby boomer. There's just so many different ways of relating because we were raised different. The way we communicate is different. One generation didn't have technology like we have today, and another generation, everything is social media. When I grew up, my teenage years wasn't on social media. I'm grateful you had wonderful mentors that helped you along the way, that you were able to be your authentic self, because so many times females feel like they have to be more masculine, like instead of being okay with who they are as a woman and to be able to be a good leader. So when did you discover you didn't have to fit in? I could just be myself.
I think a couple years after I was commissioned as a junior officer is probably about how long it took. But I also would say my leadership style is constantly changing based off of life experience, based off things that have happened, based off people I've interacted with and people that have impacted my life. But also for anybody in the military, when you show up at a new command, that culture is set, and you have to navigate your own way through that just one command in itself. And so sometimes you get there and you judge things and say, hey, maybe in this situation, I need to be a little more empathetic, or I need to do something because that's what the command needs me to do. And so I think actually being able to adjust your leadership style based on still being true to you, but also what is best for the command. And sometimes that's challenging because it's not necessarily a place you're comfortable being in all the time. But I think it's good to force yourself out of that comfort zone sometimes, to have those moments and to continue to grow.
I love that you say that. And for someone that's listening, really marinate on that. And that is being adaptable when you're going into different spaces. Like you said, your leadership style is always evolving. And because you're dealing with so many different people, instead of trying to change things, it's really learning who are the people on your team and who are they as individuals, what are important to them, really making those connections with the people you work with. It sounds like that has been very helpful for you, and you have taken that approach of going into that environment and really learning to be an adaptable leader. What I love about the military is you meet people, as you said earlier, from all over the world. And they, people you would probably never ever been friends with if you weren't in the military, but you become like family, like almost stick closer to you than your own brother or sister. And so that's what I love about it. So if people have the opportunity, really connect with people that you work with, and you'll find out that you have more in common than you think. We touched on different things on leadership, your journey as a commander, learning how your path has brought you to where you are today. Your dad taking that picture of you next to the ship, that was so prophetic. I wanted to find out, what message would you like to convey to listeners who may be interested in being a commander, being a history maker? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I wouldn't have gotten where I am without a phenomenal support structure. So I was very blessed that my parents supported my decision to have a career in the military. My husband supported me, his family supported me, all of my friends. And so I think first and foremost is to go back to surrounding yourself with people that want you to do well, whatever that looks like for you individually and what the right answer is. But I think having people in your corner that are there to push you. And again, sometimes when you're down, to say, hey, you've got this and you're doing great, I think is extra important, and to help you stay focused sometimes too, to call you and have those honest discussions when they say, hey, maybe you're off track a little bit. What's going on? What can I do to help you and support you and get you back on track? I think is definitely one thing. But I think also being able to give yourself the grace to fail is extra important. A lot of times kids ask me what I would tell my high school self or what I would go back and change. And I actually tell them I wouldn't change a thing. All the days that were hard and the days that were failures and the days that challenged me made me who I am today, and definitely shaped me into that person. And I wouldn't change any of it. And those days I probably would have said differently, but now having the perspective of life and what that looks like, I think that I would absolutely do it again, just because of the strength that it gave me. But the other thing too, as far as being resilient here at work, there are times where it's tiring, it's a lot. And so even my executive officer and senior enlisted advisor, part of our discussion is they have to call me on it when they see that I'm starting to get tired and I need to take a break. And so I think just finding the ways that are important for you, and then also having things that you like to do. I like to cook. So even if I'm tired, usually when I get home, cooking is the thing that makes me feel better. I like to cook dinner for my family. That's something that I do most days at home. That's my stress relief. And that's something on a day-to-day basis. But there's also times I just take a day that I go to the spa or do something that's self-care. So in the Navy, we have a phrase, shipmate self. That's the kind of hierarchy of needs, which is great and makes perfect sense. Except what I tell people all the time when I get a chance to do some mentoring and leadership discussions is those three are all still connected. So if you're not taking care of self, you can't take care of ship and shipmate. And so it's very important to make sure that you are taking that time when you need it. And sometimes there may be days that the mission is first and that's what has to happen, but you got to make sure at the end of the day you go back and do what's right for you. And for anybody that wants to do this career path, it's absolutely an option. It's been phenomenal. I would do it again in a heartbeat. And it's been the privilege of my life to serve here as the 77th commanding officer and to have the opportunity to engage with the next generation. I've never been as humbled as some of the times I've been out and little girls have come up and said, I want to be just like you when I grow up.
When you were talking, I could vision women putting in for that assignment because you took that leap of faith and you believe that it was possible. So I really love that. And I love that you practice self-care because that was one of the questions I was going to ask. I heard spa day, cooking, and staying grounded with your family. To me, food, cooking, and bringing a smile on your family's face, togetherness, that could be very healing and soothing from a long day. I know you have some commanding to do, Commander Farrell. I really appreciate you. And thank you so much for being on She Vets It. And I wish you more success beyond the Navy. I know there's so much more after the military. I see you inspiring our veterans and even those that are still in the military. So again, thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me again. And thank you for your service.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for joining us today on She Vets It. Commander Billie June Farrell's insights on leadership, mentorship, and balancing family commitments are truly inspiring. Now, we're grateful for her wisdom and dedication to empowering women in the military. If you found today's episode as insightful as we did, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your support helps us continue to amplify the voices of women veterans. Until next time, stay proud, stay strong, and keep leading the way.